welcome Pastor Jerry Dockery from Crabapple First Baptist Church to lead us in our invocation. And also want to add, you guys had a great family and community picnic at your church last night. So I was fortunate to get to stop by and fellowship a little bit.
Well, we appreciate you doing that, Mr. Mayor. And it was a good evening, a chance for us to recognize first responders and school leadership and kind of kick off the new year with them. So it's a good evening.
Yep, thanks.
Lord, we thank you for your grace and for your mercy, for your blessings upon our day today and every day. We're grateful, Lord, for the opportunities and privileges we have in this special community to serve you and to serve one another. I'm thankful for these folks who give their time and energy to make the community better and to connect us all together in achieving what is best for all concerned. And I pray that you give wisdom and direction to them as they consider important matters to the community. We do continue to lift up those that, Lord, run to the crisis, the danger in our community to protect the rest of us, those first responders. Commit them to your care. And Lord, as our schools are back in session, we pray for all the leadership there, teachers, that you would equip them with wisdom and patience and guidance as they begin to instruct and prepare the next generation who will take over leadership in the coming days for this community and many others. And we just pray that we be good stewards of all that you've given us and that you would bless this time together tonight for your glory. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, August 6, 2018 to order. Sudi, if you'll please call roll and make general announcements.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the August 6, 2018 regular meeting. I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment, you're required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking on the item. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards are received by the city clerk prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of an organized group or association, provided the individual has filed a notarized affidavit with the city clerk that they have the authority to speak on behalf of the organization. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Councilmember Peyton Jamison.
Here.
Councilmember Matt Coons.
Here.
Councilmember Laura Bentley is calling in from Charleston, South Carolina. Hi, Laura.
I'm here.
Okay. And Councilmember Rick Morick.
Here.
And for the record, Councilmember Joe Longoria is absent. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. And our first item will be approval of the meeting agenda. And I'll open up for approval on the agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Coons with a second from Councilmember Morick. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, next item is public comment. And the next item would be general public comment. And public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes for remarks. Sudi, do we have any general public comment?
We do not have any general public comment.
Okay. If you would please sound the next item, the consent agenda.
First item is approval of the July 23rd, 2018 regular City Council meeting minutes. Agenda item number 18223, approval of an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Milton and Fulton County for the provision of election services. Agenda item number 18224. Next, approval of a construction services agreement between the City of Milton and Blunt Construction Company, Inc. for a resurfacing and reconstruction project. Agenda item number 18225, approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Tizzy Liz Design, LLC, for graphic design services. Agenda item number 18226. Our fifth consent agenda item is approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Davis Engineering and Surveying, LLC, for the Mountain Road Culvert Survey. Agenda item number 18227. Approval of a professional services agreement between the City of Milton and Emergency Care Medical Group, PC, Dr. Russell Mitchell, for medical oversight for the city's fire rescue department. Agenda item number 18228. Our seventh and final consent agenda item this evening is approval of the following subdivision plats. Doug Miller, land lot 519 and 585, Lost River Bend, combo plat, one lot, 3.415 total acres, 0.29 lots per acre. Birmingham Highway, land lots 487 and 522, 15275 to 15315 Birmingham Highway, minor plat, 3 lots, 9.965 total acres, 0.30 lots per acre. Next, Brayburn Phase 4, land lots 1098 and 1135, 1219 to 1239, Parkstead Lane, condo plat, 10 units, 0.981 total acres, 10.2 units per acre. And the last is Ross J. Cantor, land lots 883 and 884 at 825 Traymore Place, combo plat, one lot, 1.32 total acres, 0.76 lots per acre. Agenda item number 18229.
Okay, do I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make motion that we approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Morrig with a second from Councilmember Jameson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous, Judy. Okay, we don't have any items under reports and presentations, so we'll move on to our first presentation. Sudi, if you'll please read the first presentation item.
First presentation item is consideration of an ordinance of the Mayor and Council of the City of Milton, Georgia, to amend Appendix A, fees and other charges for Chapter 50, subdivisions, Section 208, Agenda Item Number 18230. Our second and final first presentation item is consideration of an ordinance of the City of Milton, Georgia, to amend Chapter 4, Alcoholic Beverages, Sections 4-533 of the Code of the City of Milton, Georgia. Agenda item number 18231.
Okay, do we have a motion to reduce the legal fees? Okay. Do we have a motion on the first presentation?
Just checking if you're awake there, Ken.
For a motion on the first presentation as read.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the first presentation as read.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion from Councilmember Jameson, second from Councilmember Kuntz. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to our public hearing. Sudi, if you'll please sound that item.
This is our second public hearing, consideration of an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Milton, Georgia, to establish the ad valorem tax rate of the city of Milton for fiscal year 2019 and for other purposes. Agenda item number 18218. First presentation and first public hearing was this morning at 9 a.m., August 6th, at our special called council meeting. Ms. Bernadette Harville.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As City announced, this will be our second of 3 required public hearings regarding setting the millage rate for 2018 property taxes. The agenda this evening will be the same as the one this morning. Just in case anybody was not able to hear it, I'm going to go through it as this is the first time we are hearing it. On the screen in front of you, you will see the agenda, which outlines the topics that will be covered in this presentation. First, we will go over a few of the definitions for the terms that will be seen throughout the presentation. Then we will cover the legal requirements mandated by the state regarding required public hearings pertaining to adopting the millage rate. After that, we will go into the actual numbers behind the proposed millage rate, the estimated digest provided by Fulton County, and staff's anticipations utilized in the revenue predictions for fiscal year 2019's budget. We will then switch gears with an explanation of the rationale behind maintaining a millage rate of 4.731 mils, which is the same millage rate the city has had since its incorporation. We will then go over a quick overview of some opportunities available for property owners to reduce their tax liability and how a tax bill is calculated. The last section of today's presentation will show where the money collected from a typical Milton tax bill goes and the pros and cons of rolling back the millage rate to the computed rate, which takes the increases due to reassessments of existing real property into account. First definition we have this evening is the term mill. A mill is equal to 1/1000th of a U.S. dollar. The next definition is fair market value. The fair market value is an estimate of the market value of a property as determined by Fulton County Board of Assessors. Again, this is different than the fair market value you may see when you're trying to sell your home. The assessed or taxable value is the 40% of the fair market value, and this is the value in which your actual property taxes are calculated by multiplying the millage rate. Lastly, we have the rollback rate. The rollback rate is the previous year's millage rate minus the millage equivalent to the total net assessed value added by those reassessed values. Again, we had our first public hearing this morning at 9 a.m. We're here this evening for our second required public hearing, and the third public hearing and the vote will occur next Monday, August 13th at 5:45 during a special called meeting. 3 public hearings are required any time that taxes are increased either due to a millage rate increase or an increase due to a computed rollback, a rate higher than the computed rollback rate. This year, we are proposing to maintain the capped millage rate of 4.731 mils for maintenance and operation and a 0.706 variable rate for the green space bond. Last year's green space bond millage rate pertained to interest-only payments, and this will be the first year we have a bond millage rate pertaining to principal and interest payments due. On this slide, you will see a breakdown of the maintenance and operating digest as presented to the city from Fulton County back in June of 2018. The total net digest is $2,857,805,010. The total taxes levied off of that digest would be $13,520,276, with $13,394,736 pertaining to real and personal property, and $125,540 pertaining to motor vehicle taxes. Those numbers are all based on 100% collection anticipations. After discussions with city staff and a review of historical figures, a collection rate of 90% for real and personal property taxes and 50% for motor vehicle taxes within the general fund were decided upon. That would yield $12,021,176 for real and personal property taxes and $62,770 for motor vehicle taxes. Again, those motor vehicle taxes are now being calculated in a different way, and we have the birthday tax, which is the motor vehicle taxes you see here on the property digest, and then there's the title ad valorem taxes, the TAVT, that you'll see as a sales tax as a different line item throughout the revenues for 2019. Our green space bond anticipations were calculated a little lower at 85% for real and personal and maintained at the 50% for motor vehicle taxes. We chose to take this little more conservative approach because we cannot defer any payments on the bond nor make any amendments to those payments. If revenues come in above those calculated here, we will put them aside for future payments towards the bond. They cannot be used for any other purposes. Here you'll see our rationale for holding the millage rate at 4.731 mils. As you know, back in 2017, the late digest was the second time the city has received a digest late, and we used to collect our taxes at the end of the fiscal year. The decision to determine to collect our taxes at the beginning of the fiscal year required the city to go an entire year without any current year revenues. That decision also resulted in the decision to defer certain capital projects in 2017 and may also affect 2018's capital projects. The city also has a capped millage rate. Our capped millage rate is challenged by the fact that we have a limited commercial tax base, a little bit different than a lot of the cities that are surrounding us. Milton's tax digest is made up of 15% commercial, and we have 2% of our current land zoned for commercial use. In addition to that, the assessed property values that we've seen have not kept up with the market since 2008, and we are uncertain as to what the state will decide to do with the county's digest, as neither 2017 nor 18 have been certified at this point. Lastly, we have our community's vision to retain its rural character. That speaks back to the fact of our limited commercial tax base, and that will continue to be that way as we go along in the future. In addition to these facts, we have the unknown long-term fiscal impacts of the proposed homestead millage referendum that will be held this November on the ballot. With the unknown impact that this will have on future taxes, in addition to not having certified digest, the city has proposed to maintain that millage rate at 4.731. Here, I'd just like to outline really quickly for some property owners some options they have for tax savings regardless of what millage rate the city sets. First is your basic homestead exemption. Basic homestead exemptions apply if your home is your primary residence and there are no age or income restrictions. That will create a $15,000 exemption off of the assessed value of your property. Next, we have some senior exemptions that you can apply for right here with the city. If you're 65 and older, you will receive an additional $15,000 off that assessed value. Those who are 65 and meet our income qualifications will receive $25,000. And those who are age 70 and meet our income qualifications will receive a full value exemption of their city property taxes. Lastly, we also have a disability exemption with the city, where if you are certified disabled by the licensed physician and meet the income qualification, you also get a full value exemption. Those income qualifications, for those applying with a 2017 tax return, is $64,488. And those who will apply using a 2018 tax return will be $66,912. In addition to exemptions that come off of the assessed value, there are also other opportunities for tax savings that would reduce the taxable value of your property. The most common we see is the Conservation Use Value Assessment, or the CUVA. The city will be having a joint workshop with the county to go over the information regarding a CUVA for those who are interested. Next, we'll go over how we calculate your tax bill. After looking at the digest, it was determined that a fair market value of $400,000 is the average fair market value for a home within the city limits. So taking that $400,000 times the 40% gives you your assessed value of $160,000. Then we take off the $15,000 for if you have a local homestead exemption, giving you the subtotal of $145,000. You then multiply that times your millage rate, and your taxes due would be $686 for that average home. Next, I'd like to show you the value of that tax dollar. When you pay $686, about $295.51 of that annually goes towards public safety. That's police and fire protection. Then you can go down and see line by line what each department gets of that $686. And at the bottom, you can see our capital pay-grow program would get $113.28 to fund capital projects under the current funding system we have. Next, I'd like to show what the difference of that tax bill would be if we did roll back to the 4.031 rate. You'll see that would be a difference of $101.50, giving public safety $251.79, and the capital pay-go program $96.52. The following slides are going to go through the pros and cons that city staff went through in order to make the determination to not roll back the millage rate from 4.731 mils to the 4.031, which would have been an inflation-neutral millage rate. The pros we have looked at were the fact that every home has a different, unique set of circumstances, and rolling back the millage rate may result in savings for certain property owners. If the assessed value of that property remained the same as last year, and we rolled back, that property owner would see a savings. If that assessed value increased substantially, even a 0.7 mil rollback may not result in savings for certain property owners. We also have the ability to maintain existing base level services at this 4.031 mils. We would not have any staffing layoffs, and we'd also be able to continue providing minimum maintenance as opposed to possibly providing additional proactive services or actions. As a millage rate does not directly affect your property value, it may improve the marketability of your home. People looking to buy a home may be attracted to a community that has a lower tax rate. And lastly, we have a variable millage rate approach could reduce the city's pay-go strategy for capital projects that we've been using for the past, and we can look towards more voter-approved GO bonds. Some of the cons we discussed relate back to the discussion we had earlier about those deferred projects. Some of the deferred projects from 2017 included a scheduled replacement of vehicles for fire and police were pushed off. We also had to push off some annual pavement projects and the replacement of our self-contained breathing apparatus for fire. Lastly, we had to defer some seed money for Providence Park improvements. If we roll back the millage rate, those projects, along with others, may result in another deferment in 2019. Then we have our restricted ability to consider new initiatives for both M&O and capital projects might be a possibility. Last, on this slide, we have the results of the deferred short-term capital maintenance could result in more costly capital replacements in the long term. An example of this would be foregoing routine pavement may result in more expensive full-depth reclamation on those roads that aren't able to be paved without the paving money. We may have to require reprioritizing services and have the possibility of reduced services. An example of that would be instead of mowing right away several times throughout the year, we may have to do them less frequently. This, of course, would not go towards anything that would be legally mandated or any kind of safety issues. It would just be additional aesthetic activities. And lastly, the capped millage rate prevents catch-ups in future years like other cities. So we don't have the ability in a declining revenue year to raise our millage rate above the capped rate to catch up. Rolling back the millage rate may also impact the city's capital contributions to our local schools. Currently, Milton has a very unique IGA with Fulton County Schools, where we exchange use for fields for capital improvements on those fields, and we may have to reprioritize the ability to be able to do that in the future with a rollback millage rate. Lastly, the rollback millage rate may impact our continued efforts to attract and retain a highly talented workforce that meet the needs and expectations of our citizens. We have a mean and lean team here at Milton, and the ability to retain the talent that we have is an important feature of our city. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions on?
I just got a general question. If let's say the tax rate, the ad valorem tax rate was rolled back, in order to raise it back, if we needed to raise it back up to the 4.7, would you have to have a referendum to raise that once you've lowered it?
We would do the same thing we are doing right now. The next year, we'd have our 3 public hearings regarding raising it again.
But it wouldn't require a vote of all the citizens, like if that's capped.
That's to go above the 4.731.
Okay, thanks.
What else, Matt?
Yeah, and Bernadette, so, and I may have missed it, I'm trying to, so we had the 4.731, but how did you get to the 4.031 with the rollback number again? Say that again.
So there is a form called a PT 32.1 that is issued from the Department of Revenue that you do a calculation, and it shows your net digest from the prior year and your net digest for the current year, and then in between it shows the changes that are result from reassessments of existing real property versus new development.
Okay.
The percentage of the reassessments or existing property is what triggers an increase. So that was the 17.37%, which is equivalent to 0.7 mils.
Gotcha. So basically, all things being equal, if I get this right, I want to make sure I say this right. So we were here now, right? But increase is going to bring us here. But if we rolled it back, we'd take us right back to where we are today.
Correct. And
Correct.
our concern right now is just the fact that we're not sure that the state will accept that reassessment because we don't have a certified digest, so we're kind of working on the best assumptions we have.
Right. It's an imperfect science right now. So.
Anybody else? Laura, do you have any questions? Time to...
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Bernadette, 2018, the tax digest, what is an update on where we stand with that as far as the number of appeals that we've had?
So the digest that we had received was before all the appeals were in.
What
So-
number were we at, though? I think we were at roughly 1,500.
The-
I think we got the number beforehand, but it was roughly 1,500 appeals.
Okay?
So the 2018 digest is most likely not going to be certified either.
I can't speak to that at this time, but we are hoping that we will have a certified digest, and if not, a temporary collection order to bill on time this year.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
And just to clarify too, this is just for this upcoming year, 2019. Obviously, we have the vote coming up in November that the citizens will do to determine how all this calculation happens going forward in 2020. Just to state that, right?
So the vote in November will be determined on a base level. So your base year would be probably 2016, which is lower than 17 or 18 at this time.
Right.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on this, too?
We do have one, sir,
Okay.
and that is Mr. Robin Frickton.
Good evening. My name's Robin Frickton. I live at 2970 Francis Road. My thing is, okay, I've been up here for 35 years, okay, and, been here with the Milton the whole time. And looking at the tax digest for the last 5 years, my concern is the increase that we're looking at right now, based upon just leaving everything the way it is as much as the last 5-year increases combined. Now, it's just not you guys. It's Fulton County, it's the school board. But I mean, as a taxpayer, we're being hit by all 3 or 4 or whatever taxes. Plus, the taxpayers did provide vote on other taxes, gasoline taxes and whatnot, I guess, for the SPO. So the city's getting money. From my understanding, the city gets money from other sources. And, I don't think you need to go back reduce it to 0. My thing would be, 10% increase is fine. I mean, I understand, with inflation and everything else, but 20% here, what Fulton County's doing, we're not sure. I mean, they're supposedly going to lower the millage rate, but the school tax is outrageous. And everybody in the county, including yourselves, are all being hit by that. The city, I mean, like I said, if it goes up 10%, I can handle it. And the reason I'm concerned is I'm a retiree, definitely fixed income, probably going to get lower the way things are going with the federal government. And, I planned as best I could, but I wasn't I anticipated increases in the taxes, but not within in 2 years. My tax will double, basically. This year, if nothing changes. The other thing is, our tax is almost equal to the Fulton County operating budget tax, what they're collecting. We're getting up there. And one of the deals was, we were trying to say, have more control of the money and the taxes because Fulton County was going out, just doing whatever they wanted with the money. So, the other thing, though, that I haven't heard is, could you increase the exemptions for everybody? I don't know if that takes a referendum or what it takes, but I mean, if you could increase the exemption, then you find out we didn't need to do that. Bring it to where it was. Maybe you could do that. I know some of this takes votes and whatnot, but increasing exemption for everybody would be good. For retirees or people over 65. One thing, we do have the exemption, but now everybody's property doubled in price, so that exemption is not really all that great. Could we see an increase for the people over 65? Or could we see an exemption of if you've been paying Fulton County tax or city tax for 25 years, whatever, you get 50% off for paying it this long. I mean, we got to get a break somewhere. But it would be nice if for some kind of consideration of keeping the tax. I'm not saying neutral, but giving us a break of some sort. because the property values, I don't think are going to ever go down. Fulton County assessors may get their act together and do assessments every year like they should. And so all I can say, down the road, we may just keep seeing these increases coming up and up and up. And eventually you're going to chase away people because it's going to get too expensive. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other public comment, Sudi?
I do have one other, and that's from Mr. Scott Reese.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Scott Reese, 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia. The 4 properties that I'm in charge of with the family, 3 of them doubled the assessed value, 1 of them tripled. So my tax bill is going to more than double on 3 properties and triple on the other one. So I'm hoping that the city budget is not going to double or triple, but everyone that I'm speaking with and a fair number of clients have called, and they're pretty much in the same boat. It looks like all of the undeveloped property is anywhere in the 2 to 3 times increase in value. So in my professional life and my personal life, I create a budget first, and then I work from there. What I don't like is the fact that now we're going to have, it looks like, double or more of the tax digest increase, and then it's like, wow, here's all this money, and we're going to spend it. So I would like to think that we need to create a budget, and if that budget's an increase of 10 or 20%, that's understandable. But if nothing changes, then it appears that your tax digest is going to double or more. Then we're going to go just looking for ways to spend the money. And back to the percentage of commercial property versus other cities. You know, it was stressed to us in planning many years ago when I was a college student that a city that has a percentage as high as we do residentially does not work. But yet, our properties that are slated in Crabapple, it seems like every plan that comes forward is extremely high in residential. Where is our commercial tax base going to come from? So I think you really need to be looking at that too. Otherwise, we're just completely hamstrung. Thank you so much for your time and effort. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Sudi, do we have any more public comment?
That's all, sir.
Okay. I'll close the public hearing. And I've got a few comments, and have heard from a few folks, and just like our speakers here, it's a tough situation. It's and one thing that I think everybody's aware of, but you have to put it in perspective, is the overwhelming majority of your tax bill goes to the school board and the county. The cities is a small percentage, so if you go up X percent, the city's not doubling their revenues. It's a much smaller percent. And I'd be lying if I didn't say it would be easy politically to just say, hey, let's roll the millage rate back to make our citizens happy. But I'm just concerned that fiscally responsible, that's not the right decision. And I'll tell you why. Probably only Councilmember Morrick here and I have been here since day one, and 12 years ago. And before the city of Milton, and we were unincorporated Fulton County, everybody was just kind of like, hey, leave us alone. We don't really need much, just leave us alone. I can remember my wife, sometimes the alarm would go off and we'd shut it off and we'd go back to sleep. And an hour later we'd wake up and there was a police officer there. So, but everybody just, was used to just leave us alone, but not a whole lot of services. Now, I'm proud of the fact that when the city was incorporated and our millage rate was set, and we have kept that millage rate, we have just exponentially increased services. And as we've done that, our citizens' desires and needs have changed, and they expect more. And, things like, parks and public safety and facilities and road work and infrastructure improvements. Another thing that everybody's, really proud of in Milton and everybody supports with our green space bond. We got $25 million to buy and preserve property. But guess what? And we've already bought Milton Country Club, a big chunk of property. Well, what that does is that takes money out of our revenue. That does not produce any revenue, and it adds a huge amount of cost for upkeep and just to improve it. So, the other thing, and I think, Bernadette, we talked about our digest. We're not sure what Fulton County's going to do with that. There's a lot of appeals out there that'll play in. Our collection rate will be a lower percentage, or very much could be. So the reality is we're talking about if we were to, even like the example, roll back a pretty big chunk of our millage rate for an $800,000 home, that's about $200 a year. Well, that's not a huge amount. It is, it's $200, but there's a reason that our property values have gone up here in Milton. And it's the quality of life and it's the services and whatnot. So, the good news is our property values have gone up. The bad news is it sometimes costs us a little bit more. There's a reason too. We were able to, we paid cash for our city hall. We got a AAA bond rating, which is unheard of for a new city. And all that's because we've been fiscally responsible. And so I think this is one of those with all the unknowns and our costs are going up. We're playing catch up, making all these improvements. And again, we should all be proud that we've been able to do that because the quality of life and the services is vastly different than what we started at. But, we need to be careful with that. And if we, just to make ourselves look good politically, to lower our millage rate and then turn around and find ourselves in a bind next year and have to raise it back up, I'd prefer to see how this shakes out. And then we can always lower it as we move forward once we kind of play catch up there. So anyways, that's just my comments on this and certainly open up to the rest of you guys.
No, I definitely agree with what you just said. And with the Fulton County Tax Digest, we didn't know what 2017 is. We don't know what 2018 is. And with a cap millage rate, I'd rather play it safe right now.
Okay. Matt?
Yeah, and respectfully, I may have to take the opposite position on this one. And nothing against the staff either. I know that our staff's heart is doing the right thing under Steve's leadership because the desire that they have is to do nothing other than to provide services for our residents, and they do that on a daily basis. We watch that. But I think this goes a little bit deeper in one sense. I've talked to a couple of residents, not only just in the past week or so, but dating back to the chaos in 2017, last year under when Fulton County had this issue. And, I recognize that what comes out of people's pocketbooks affects them personally. We know that. Reagan, with all the growth we've had, Reagan said it best, the closest thing to eternal life is a government program. I worry that as we're having the success that we have, we want to make sure, yes, keeping things local is good, but I also want to make sure that we are sharing in the pain with our residents, staff, council, businesses, and residents all together as one team. There are people out there that will be hurting because of this with anywhere from 25 to 200% increases on their tax rates. And while we're providing our services that we are, that doesn't mean that we can't sharpen our pencils and share in that pain with our residents at a level that shows that this is more than just services. This is more than just roads or buildings or trees or things like that. Our greatest asset that we have here are the people that live in Milton. And, I look at it this way, too. You have maybe $100 off in the average house, but, for one family, I don't know if that's going to mean whether a young kid actually has a chance to go to an after-school program at a park for that fee, or if a spouse takes his wife out to dinner for that fee, or a senior is able to buy prescriptions with that fee. I don't know, but the point is that when money is still in a resident's pocket, under these situations, I think that it works better for them to decide how they're going to use that, and we share in that pain with them. It goes to a far more emotional level than just the than just a budgeting side. So, granted, we're going to get more money regardless. I don't know what the number, if there is going to be a decrease, ought to be, but I just feel uncomfortable if we keep the millage rate the same, that we're not sharing in that pain. And that's a viewpoint that's out there, and it needs to be said.
Absolutely. Okay. Rick?
I have a comment. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Okay, and Mayor Lockwood mentioned this, and I just wanted to. I'm not sure if Stacy's there, but to anyone's knowledge who's been on council since the beginning of our city, have we ever had this much uncertainty with regard to the tax digest, homestead exemptions? I mean, there's just so many numerous unknowns. That's what's making me uneasy about making any big change at this point. And I know that staff is recommending that we hold the line until next year when we have more information. And I know that they've certainly been doing a great bit of analysis on this. So I appreciate Bernadette's presentation. It was very helpful.
Okay.
So, I mean, do we even know what numbers we're looking at for next year? Revenue-wise?
For 2019?
Because we don't know with the appeals and everything, right? I mean,
we do our best to forecast what we believe our revenues will be. That's where we came up with a 90% collection rate. If you want, Bernadette, do you have those numbers with you?
Yeah, I can pull them back up.
and when we're talking about, and also when rolling back the millage rate, what dollars are we talking about total? If you have
I'll have that for you in a second.
And again, while she's pulling that up, the hard part about this, if for every $100 in taxes you had, if that was in the city of Milton, yeah, we could make a big difference. But, we could drop our taxes down to 0%, our millage rate to 0, and collect nothing, and it may drop your total taxes 20% or so. So it's a tough situation.
And so we actually did start with a budget before determining the millage rate, and what budget numbers we came up with for revenues regarding real and personal taxes in the general fund would be that $12,021,176, and for motor vehicles, $62,770. Included in that is our current PAYGO strategy. So part of that increase that we'll see over last year's anticipations or collections would go towards catching up to what we had to defer due to the delay in an entire year with no property taxes, and being able to recoup and start the new projects. So again, if they came in lower, we could reprioritize and cut back on capital if needed.
But I think, what was the question?
And also, what was the total? I mean, the 12 million is based on
That's our anticipated collection rate.
For the current, okay.
That's for 2000, but FY19. So
Got
we
it.
will come with that budget next Monday, right after the vote on the millage.
Got it, okay.
To show exactly where everything goes. But that is the line item for revenues for real and personal property.
And if the millage rate was rolled back, do you know what the number would be?
Based on the point of
what's the
7.
difference?
Yeah, it would be the 17% less.
Okay.
And to show you again, if you wanted to see, I didn't know if you were asking about it or not, but that would be your typical average Milton bill. Clearly, there are a range of bills within Milton, so that it would change depending on the personal property.
And I guess can you give us a worst case scenario with us having a cap millage rate on home prices? Let's say we roll back the millage rate. Let's say we have a little bump in the recession. Mm-hmm. And we can't go above our current millage rate. So would we be in a really big bind at that point?
So the bind would be the decision to determine whether or not we can maintain the properties have at the level we currently maintain them. We kind of have room to talk in there. But yes, if we are capped back at 2016's rates, we're talking about going back towards below $10 million annually, and if they go even lower than that. So if we have a recession on top of the capped millage rate, on top of the CPI exemption, we could be talking losing $3 million.
Okay.
And the hard decision, of course, at that point is what level of service do you want to deliver? If you want to deliver the same level of service, you would have to go and get into longer term debt. Instead of a PAYGO system where we're taking current year revenues and putting it away and doing capital improvements, what you'd find yourself doing to maintain the same level of service is you'd be bonding for it. And then what you would be incurring is long-term debt. And as long-term debt becomes a larger percentage of your costs, it reduces your ability to be able to provide additional services.
See, I don't want to get in that long-term debt. scenario like a lot of other cities in this country are getting.
Well, this system that's been created here, and I give everybody that was here incredible credit. It's the only reason we were able to get that AAA rating was because of the pay-go system you created. It provided us enough cash. In fact, we lived the scenario when we were able to go an entire year without collecting property taxes. That's why we got the AAA rating. As we booked our revenues at the end of the year instead of the beginning of the year. That was one of the things when we were interviewing with the Raiders. We said we can defer, and we actually proved it because we just did it when we had to rebook our. In reality, we went an entire year without property tax revenues, and that's why we got that rating. It is we definitely have a very good balance sheet, but it's been done as a result of very conservative budgeting, and this is a very conservative budget. As far as reducing anything at this point, I'm not going to get into like scare tactics. You're not going to have to cut and slash and burn. But the only way to reduce at this point would be to reduce the level of service.
I mean, we aren't like other cities. We are unique because of our lack of our commercial tax base, and that's why people want to live here. So the more and more I think about this and the long-term effects, and of course, we'll go through the budget process, and I don't expect us to be blowing money because that's not what any of us want to do. And we don't even have the numbers for 2017 or 2018, so I think this probably should be a discussion for next year. It's just my opinion.
I mean, regarding commercial tax revenues, we do have a strategy, and we're going to be getting deeper into that as we get into the 2019 budgeting process. There are areas that we could leverage to be able to increase our commercial tax digest, and I fully plan to exploit that.
Okay.
And it will increase that percentage of our tax digest if we're successful. But at the end of the day, we do have a limited area, which we could exploit.
Okay.
And I want to be very clear, and for those that are listening and those in the audience, we absolutely, and I personally, and I'm sure everybody else here does not want for any of our citizens to have to spend $1 out of their pocket. Keep in mind that every one of us up here are hit just as hard. I'm almost embarrassed to say what my taxes went up, but I could buy a second home based on just what I'm paying in additional taxes this year or coming up. And so again, we're all getting hit hard. I think the answer is, and even some of our public comment speakers said, is to look for, incentives or deductions or whatever that people can apply for to help out those that are really affected. But again, to keep the quality of life here and whatnot that we have our folks expect, it's a tough situation. It's, again, our costs go up every year, but we haven't raised our millage rate. And so with all the unknowns, I'd just rather be fiscally conservative. But again, I want to make sure that our citizens, everybody know my opinion, my feelings are, we need to look for exemptions or ways to help, but again, we need to spend your money smartly also. So, and not getting a bind where we're upside down here 2 or 3 years from now too, and the roads are in a mess and we got to go borrow money to do that, and lack of parks and, a lot of this, again, I brought up a point a lot of people aren't thinking about, all this green space that we're buying. It's great. And we got the bond money to buy the property, but then we don't get tax revenue from the property, and we have additional costs keeping the property up, and public, police and fire and all that. So it's and maintenance. So it's a big deal. So, Rick, did you have something?
Yeah, Bernadette. So the $3 million, you're saying it's a net increase, essentially, in revenues of $3 million.
So
I hate to use the word revenues.
at 100% collect.
At 100% collection versus 90.
Sorry.
Okay, so that's the difference there. I think what we can do is continue to look over the next week. We've got one more week before we do the final vote. Work with staff and take a look and see. Try to look at what your assumptions are for the budget, and then look and just see. I do not want to go the route of actually having to do a bond to try to finance city government. I just think that goes totally against everything we did, and we knew going into this that we were going to have a much greater percentage than most cities in revenues coming from residents. But the challenge is, how do we balance that? And I know it's a small percentage of the total tax bill, but still anything that we could do lighten the load. If there is a way to do that and still provide the level of service, that's, I think, what we need to look at doing.
And just to clarify, property tax revenues are a portion of our revenue portfolio, and we have seen some declines in some other areas, so there will not be a 17% increase in revenues across the board when you see the revenue presentation.
Okay.
And I can bring that to the final hearing if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, that'd be good information.
Yeah.
Laura, did you have any comments?
Yeah, I just real quick comment on the cap, which we all love, our millage cap, but it also does tie our hands as far as our ability to catch up. And I do have a lot of empathy for our residents and the increases that they are seeing. I am one of them who has filed an appeal as well. So not many people are exempt from this uncertainty, but I do put a lot of credence in staff's recommendation. I think that we have run a very tight ship. I don't see any waste or any. I think our staff is lean and mean. So I know in the next week we'll be looking closely at this, and I appreciate all the information that we've been provided.
Steve, did you have something?
Just to respond to some of the questions and comments. I run this place like a business. It is not while I'm sure we could find small ways to save money, at the end of the day, this is not government bureaucracy spending money out there. I question if we have an expense that doesn't make sense. If it's a difference of $12, they hear from me, and I'm sure that they're all giggling right now. It's not a matter of seeing where we could save money, though there are always places we could save money, but it's going to either impact our future strategy or our current strategy. It's not going to be a matter of whether or not, you could have saved, if you would have ordered paper towels from here, you're going to save more. It's not there. I'm just telling you that.
Sure. And let me comment to that. And Steve, I appreciate that. I'm not saying that at all. I hope you understand that. And I don't think anybody else is either. You know, obviously we have a very ambitious plan that we've had for the city for a long time with a lot of future expenses that are coming up down the road that we have. The real question is, we have a lot of residents that also run their families like a business too, but they're going to get hit. They don't have a choice about what they're going to have to pay on their taxes because that's going to be dictated to them by the rule of law. And that's the way the government works.
And that's what I tell our staff every day. So
Right.
Remember, you're not earning this money. It's being mandated to us, which is
Right.
why you have even more of a responsibility to spend it
Exactly, according to
responsibly.
what we knew at the time, right? But now as conditions change as well, so they have to adjust. And I just think it's worthwhile for us to look to see if there's anywhere where we can adjust as well. They're being forced to on this condition, and we can do it voluntarily if we choose to do that with them at the kitchen table in that sense. And that's all I'm saying. So.
Okay. And you know what, while we got this, I do want to put a plug for our city staff and for those listening and those here. You would be very proud. To Steve's point about $12 or whatever, I've seen him look at the power bill and go to staff and go, why is our power bill $15 up this month versus last year?
Right.
So our staff does look at every dollar, so we thank you for that. Any other comments?
Good debate.
Okay. All right. So we have no other items under the zoning agenda, so we'll move to unfinished business. Sudi, if you'll please sound the first item.
This item is consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 18, Article 4, Monitored Alarm Systems, Sections 18-68 to 18-93. Agenda item number 18207. First presentation was at the July 23rd, 2018 regular City Council meeting. Chief Rich Austin.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Regarding the proposed changes to the monitored alarm ordinance, based on some recent citizen feedback, we've discovered an opportunity to further clarify some of the language in the ordinance. Additionally, we'd like to move the fee structure into our Appendix A so that it coalesces with our other city ordinances. So based on that, I would respectfully request that this be deferred to the September 24th agenda to allow us to make those minor revisions.
Okay. Any comments, or do we have any public comments on that?
We do not, sir.
Okay. Any comments or questions, Matt?
Yeah, I think a lot of people had heard why we're why this has come forth, and they have some questions about the fees and things like that, so I think it's good we're deferring that and figuring that out. So I just appreciate your looking at that further. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
oh, yeah, and one question I do have, I don't think it was answered. So there was a question about having a fee or a penalty for a false alarm.
Correct.
What is the definition of that false alarm? Is it when the call is made to dispatch? Is it when dispatch calls the police, or when the police actually show up at the door, or when
We would
they're en
have,
route?
have to actually show up at the door.
At the door, okay.
And we have many more alarms that go or actually dispatched that we do not
Sure.
actually get there. But
Okay.
it does still divert the officer, but the fine doesn't get incurred, or they count toward the 2 free false alarms
At
per
the door.
year until an officer actually arrives.
Gotcha. That was a question I needed clarification on. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate you looking into, because this is a tough, again, a false alarm could be an annoyance or, takes time from our police and public safety. But obviously, there's always the chance that it is an issue. So, but I tell one quick story. When I first built my house, or it was fairly new, and the alarm went off, and by mistake or whatever, and I got the phone call, and the lady said, can I give me the password? And I said, password is Snowball, just like my dog. She said, I'm sorry, that's not it, sir. I said, well, we just set this thing up, and that's what I told him to put, so it's Snowball. I'm sorry, sir, it's not it. If you don't have another password, I'm going to have to call the police and tell them to come. So finally they said, okay, ma'am, you know what? She said, I'm going to have to call the police. I said, you go ahead and call the police, and I'm the mayor, and I'm going to call them and tell them not to come. You tell them to come, and I'll call them and tell them not to come. Anyway, so sorry about that. Warning. All right. Well,
I have a quick question
okay.
for Chief Austin. Chief Austin, I just wanted to, I had a couple calls from citizens on the plans for a recurring fee that would be due to the city. Can you comment on that?
As far as renewal fees?
Yes.
Right. The language as it stands says that the city may incur a renewal fee per year. That was never a part of our plan moving forward. We would obviously have to make an amendment, an Appendix A adjustment to do that, which would have to go back, obviously, through this body. It was just placed in there based on the model that we used from other cities.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So the net result is we do not have to charge an additional fee.
Correct. There's still the registration fee,
Right.
which we've historically charged.
Right,
No
but that's-
renewal fee.
we
We
don't
will
have to
require
add
a
anything.
renewal. And then there is a fine if we go out to a residence and we can't locate the owner and we find out that there has been no renewal. We'll offer those opportunities whenever their renewal comes up every year.
There'll be no renewal fee.
Yeah,
It won't be a yearly
Yeah,
bill.
you'll just have to renew it. And I think this is something we can communicate too, through our communications department and all that. We can make sure that we educate everybody and then get lots of communication on that, what you have to do and, as far as renewal and all that and the process, but that there aren't additional fees imposed.
Correct.
As we're talking about tax increases.
And actually, we'll point out that some of the fines have actually decreased under this model. We found with other jurisdictions that this promotes compliance. There's a shorter time window to pay, but the fees actually decrease quite significantly.
Okay,
So
good.
the higher fees go to the folks that offend more often.
Okay. All right. Then I'll open up for a motion. Staff has asked to defer this till when?
September 24th.
Till September 24th. Rick?
I'll make a motion that we defer agenda item number 18-207 to September 24th.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for deferral from Councilmember Moore to September, what was that?
24th.
24th, with a second from Councilmember Kunitz. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Move on to our next unfinished business item. Sudi, if you'll please sound that item.
This item is consideration of an ordinance of the City Council to authorize Fulton County to conduct elections. Agenda item number 18208. First presentation was at the July 23rd regular City Council meeting. Mr. Ken Gerard.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, good evening. As the council is aware, in November, the City of Milton specifically has 3 items upon which we will be asking our voters to act upon by way of a referendum. That is, of course, in addition to all of the state and other matters they'll be voting on. We have a homestead exemption bill, which is the product of local law that was adopted by the General Assembly this last session. We have the so-called alcohol brunch bill that may very well move back the time by which you can acquire liquor or alcohol by the drink from the currently statutory 12:30 back to 11 a.m., I believe is where that would move it to. And also, of course, we have the special election to fill the Councilmember Hewitt seat. So those 3 matters will be on there. Georgia law anticipates that a city, a municipality, has the right to enter into an agreement with the county to basically conduct our elections. That is the way the City of Milton has traditionally done our elections. And so that is what you have on your agenda this evening. What you have is it says, the state law actually says it has to be done by ordinance, which is why what you have in front of you speaks in terms of an ordinance. The ordinance does 2 things, or at least it's going to do 2 things by the end of this presentation. It's going to appoint Fulton County as the entity that can conduct the November 2018 elections for the City of Milton, and it is also going to authorize the mayor to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Fulton County to accomplish that objective. The intergovernmental agreement is in fact actually attached, and it's in your agenda book as well. And as is typical with Fulton County, they are not going to charge us for the election, and I want to caveat that, but they're not going to charge us for that election because they're otherwise conducting a lot of elections anyway. However, Fulton County has changed their policy and are going to assess every municipality upon whose behalf they run an election, what they're calling basically just an administrative 10% fee. The invoice for the City of Milton is in the back, and it is $9,012. That is our 10% administrative fee, and they're charging that to every municipality upon whose behalf they conduct elections. Members of the council, that is my recommendation, and I do have some language that if the council wants to adopt the ordinance, which will in turn provide the mayor the authority to enter into the IGA, I do have a little bit of extra language I want to add to the ordinance. And so, Mr. Mayor, if you want to open it up for any public comment, that's fine, and then I want to tell you what that language is.
Okay. Sudi, do we have any public comment on this?
We do not, sir.
Okay. We'll close the public hearing part.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council members, if you'll note, there is an ordinance, and it says, now therefore be it ordained by the mayor and city council of Milton, and it is hereby ordained and established by authority of same that, I'd like to add some language there, that Fulton County is authorized to conduct the 2018 City of Milton elections, and that the mayor is authorized, which is the regular reading of it. That's the only recommendation I would make.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. I'll open up for motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve agenda item number 18-209 with the recommended changes by our city attorney.
208.
20. All right, Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve agenda item number 18-208 with the recommended language addition by the city attorney.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval as read with the changes the city attorney added from Councilmember Jameson with a second from Councilmember Kuntz. All in favor, please say aye.
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 That's unanimous, Sudi. Okay, thank you, Ken. All right, if we can move on to our next unfinished business item. Sudi, if you'll please call that item.
This item is consideration of an ordinance to amend Chapter 48, Streets, Sidewalks, and Other Public Places, and Chapter 50, Subdivision, to clarify the need for sidewalks within certain zoning districts and to incentivize the development of larger lots within the city of Milton. Agenda item number 18-209. This item was discussed at June 11th, 2018 City Council work session. First presentation was at the July 23rd City Council meeting. Mr. Carter Lucas.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This discussion actually goes back to November of last year when we began to look at large lots and how to incentivize large lots developments within the city of Milton. Tonight we're looking at 2 different ordinances. We have Chapter 48, which is some sidewalk changes. I'm going to save those till last. Those are some cleanups from some other ordinances that we did last year, and focus initially here on those administrative changes related to the large lot development. So again, for the purposes of this discussion, we've elected to define a large lot as a 3-acre or larger lot. There's no necessarily scientific background behind that other than there's some tie in our codes to development on the gravel roads, and so that was consistent with the definition of lot developments on those gravel roads. Back in November, when we began discussing this issue, we looked at a number of different considerations that would affect the large lot developments. Some of that had to do with the market and whether the market was there for large lots. There was some discussion about incentives to retain existing large lots throughout the city. And then there were some procedural issues where we modified the existing development standards to try and incentivize those. And so the changes that we're looking at tonight really are related to the last one where we were talking about procedural issues to incentivize the large lot development. Out of that discussion, we came up with a number of different points that covered all of those different types of incentives that we could establish to create the large lots. And some of these are going on in other arenas, and they'll be running basically parallel to this process. And some of them are more large or long-term type initiatives that we're looking at. So tonight, these are the, out of that summary list, these are the items that we're hoping that the proposed changes to Chapter 50 will help us to address. So as I go through the changes, I'm not going to hit on every single change that we've proposed in the ordinance. They're all related to the high points I'm going on. But if you have any specific questions, please feel free to stop me as I work my way through this. So what we have done with this is we are looking to establish a threshold of 5 single-family lots. 5 lots of 3 acres or greater would essentially fall into a different classification of our design and platting standards. And so right now when you look at our minor plats cover 3 lots or more. And they have a little bit easier administrative process, review process than a regular plat process would be. In this case, we would extend that minor plat process to include up to 5 lots of 3 acres or more. In order to do that, we would serve them through a modified, what we're referring to as a modified driveway, which is a little bit different than a private road or a public road, which has a specific design standard, width and everything associated with it, right-of-way width, but it's more than a typical driveway. So in our current design standards, if you're serving more than or up to 3 lots, you can serve those with the driveway, which essentially has no design standards associated with it. The modified driveway would have some standards associated with it to make sure that we could provide emergency access, emergency vehicle access to your lot, but it wouldn't go all the way to a normal subdivision road. One thing I want to highlight on that is that our driveway standards do currently allow you to serve 3 lots. There's a change here that reduces that to 2 lots to meet the fire standards. So we're trying to coordinate this code with the fire standards also. And so there is a reduction from 2 to 3 to have a standard, a driveway, which essentially has no design standards associated with it. And then you'll move up to this modified driveway definition, which as long as you meet the weight requirements and width requirements to get a fire truck back to your property, those are the only standards associated with that. So this, the changes here in section 50-44 would specifically exempt these new subdivisions from the normal platting process. So in the normal platting process, we'll have a preliminary plat that goes to Planning Commission, an LDP, and a final plat that then comes back to council for approval. The 5 lots that are all 3 acres or greater would follow the minor platting process, in which they wouldn't have a preliminary plat process. So you'll save that time and that effort in that. It would basically be administrative concept approval, and then an LDP if necessary, but sometimes it's not necessary for these smaller plats. And then a final plat, as you would see a normal minor plat being approved on our consent agenda. There had been some discussion about whether or not this process would exempt these plats from the need for a rural view shed. And looking at that, the way the rural view shed requirements were set up, the rural view shed would only apply to subdivisions of more than 3 lots. And so essentially before that exempted minor plats from the rural view shed, and there was some discussion about whether or not now that we're including these 5 lots as a minor plat, whether or not they would be exempted. But the way that the standard is currently written, it doesn't make reference to a minor plat. It only makes reference to subdivisions of 3 lots or more. So our interpretation would be that because this is more than 3 lots, even though it is a minor plat, the rural view shed would still apply to these larger lot subdivisions. The other change in that particular section is related to a plan that comes through in a zoning process. So if you approve plat in a zoning process, it won't go through the preliminary platting process with Planning Commission either. So rather than having 2 steps where you've approved a plan, then the preliminary plat goes to Planning Commission, and then it gets into the process. Once you've approved it through a zoning process, it won't go to Planning Commission as a normal preliminary plat. So that's just intended to streamline that process a little bit. Another change in 50-71. Currently, if you have a minor plat approved, you can never do a minor plat to any changes to that subdivision again. In other words, if you subdivide 3 lots, you can't then subsequently subdivide one of those lots under the minor plat process. You have to go through the full preliminary plat, standard plat process in order to do that. This section says is that as long as you're not subdividing any of those again under 3 acres, then you can do subsequent minor plat revisions to that. So another effort to try and streamline those platting process. And then we start to talk about the access to the subdivisions. And so in these larger lot subdivisions, all we're necessarily looking for in these modified subdivision designs is to make sure that you can provide access for emergency vehicles to get to the lot. And so the access for this modified driveway will essentially, as I said, follow the design standards necessary for the fire marshal to ensure he can get equipment back to the property. It can be paved, it can be unpaved, so long as it supports 75,000 pounds, I think, is the vehicle weight under that design standard. And then we talked about trying to provide some additional financial incentives within these developments. And in these smaller developments, this section would say that you didn't have to provide streetlights within that development. You still can, but you're not required to, as you would under a subdivision platting process. And that's it for the Chapter 50 revisions. Chapter 48, I'll touch on that briefly. A year or so ago, we came back and made modifications to the subdivision ordinance to require sidewalks only in areas that were within a half mile of an active park or a school. It was not necessarily clear within that change that I made that if you were within one of the form-based code areas where sidewalks are required, so Deerfield or Crabapple, that sidewalks were required in those areas regardless of whether you were within a half mile of an active park or a school. So the change to the subdivision section is essentially just to clarify that, to make sure that if you're in that half mile zone anywhere within the city, you have to provide sidewalk, or if you're within one of the form-based codes or it's required by a zoning condition or zoning standard, you also have to provide sidewalks regardless of whether you meet that standard. So that was the only change for the sidewalk component of it. And that was all I had on that. If you had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
You know, I do, and just for the audience that's with us and those listening, you know, these changes were brought about. In fact, actually, Mr. Reese had brought some examples to us where, as you know, it's important for the city of Milton to try to preserve land and have lower density is what we're all striving for and our citizens like. But we saw where some people are trying to develop, say, some lots on a large piece of land, and they're having to go through a lot requirements that you would in any other subdivision. And obviously, those costs mounted up to where it didn't make it feasible to do a large lot division, whereas they'd have to add more lots to offset the cost. So that was the reason we're looking at this stuff. I'd like to ask the council, we talked about the rural view shed and whether, for only 3 lots or a 3-lot versus a minor plat versus the five lots up to here. To me, and I'll just do my opinion, but I want to hear from the council, a rural view shed to me is large lots and homes and whatnot. So to me, I think that would be another incentive for someone to do this versus, putting 10, 15, 20 houses on versus, or whatever the acreage is, but to have the larger lots. So I'd be interested to see if anybody else had that thought that maybe, allow the exemption from the view shed on up to the 5-acre lots if they're over 3 acres, because that gives it kind of that pastoral, rural look. But I'm just open to that.
So I completely agree with that. That was one of the suggestions I was going to make was if we're trying to incentivize these large lots, I mean, every dollar is important. If they're going to do a minimum of 3 acres, well, then I think that's a huge incentive. And I also had a suggestion as well, if council would think about it, is it has to go through the preliminary plat process, right? And it goes to the planning commission.
These larger lots,
Right.
we've exempted from that up to 5 lots.
So my question is, if somebody wants to do 20 3-acre lots, and I've been a part of the planning commission process on the plat, you're not given an approval or disapproval. I mean, they pretty much just say, here's our subdivision, and we just say, thanks. So my question is, I think it's more that preliminary plat review process makes sense for our denser areas, but I just don't see if anyone's going to build a 3-acre. They want to build 20 3-acre lots that meets all of our codes, and that's what the community wants. I think that's just an extra step that is not needed. That's just in my opinion. I don't know.
Anybody else? Matt or Rick?
And I agree with what you're saying as far as the large lots. That was the way the community went. So you kind of do have that rural view shed already built in. So I can agree with that. As far as what you're saying, I can, obviously this is a recommendation by you for streamlining the process, right? Your idea is to streamline it even more to the
just for the 3 acre. Yeah, just for the 3
right,
acres.
just for 3 acres. So what do you think about that?
I would question though, is that really a separate issue, or could it be tied in with this?
We can discuss it, yes.
Yeah, provided that the design standards remain the same as they do now, and we weren't talking about trying to do a modified driveway type scenario for these larger lots, there's certainly no problem with that. We didn't institute the preliminary plat through the Planning Commission until a year or two ago. So that was a relatively new addition to the process. So to go back to what we were before, I don't think would be a problem.
And I was just going to say just for the 3 acres.
Correct, right, yeah.
I can get behind that.
So, Rick, do you have any?
I guess the question I've got is if we're talking about potentially eliminating the rural view shed, would there be any type of standards for those lots that do border along the roadway?
I mean, there could. I mean, I think the idea behind the elimination of the view shed would be that it is incorporated into the lot because the lot is of such a size that it can preserve more of the natural space than a 1 acre or smaller lot is. But we could certainly establish some design standards for that if you wanted to.
I think that's a good point, but my only concern with that, part of this is almost a carrot. It's like, look, if you're going to go to a 3-acre lot versus an 1.5 acres, here's a little bit less restriction or red tape you got to go through. That would be my only concern with that. I get what you're saying. You don't want it to, look bad and
Right,
get some
or
buffer. But
I think naturally, if you're doing larger lots, people aren't going to want to have their home right on top of the street. I don't know if you need to put anything in there, or you just make the assumption that, okay, if we go with this, they're not going to want to do that, so we're just going to trust that there won't be anything on the border, the lots that border the road. That was my only question and it's more between us from a council. Do we have a concern, or do we just say, you know what?
I say, y'all want to build 3 acre lots? Go for it. I'm all for it.
To answer that, though, I would think 99% of the time,
It's not gonna
the
be an
market,
issue. Yeah.
nobody's going to, if somebody's building it to sell, they're going to put it in the best location.
Right.
If they're building for themselves, they're not going to put it next to the road or next to the property line. And we do have minimum setbacks.
You can always require a 4-board fence along the roadway too.
Purple one. Exactly. Laura, did you have any comments on that?
I do. I just want to ask about on the gravel roads, if there's a scenario where maybe you could talk me through that, Carter, because the view shed conversation is making me a little uncomfortable, and I'm thinking about Wood Road with a long drive that goes in.
I'm not sure I followed the question.
Can you give an example, Laura?
I guess the view shed on, I guess on the gravel roads or something that I guess I'm just trying to think through if that scenario, might be different. So,
I'm thinking that there really wouldn't be a difference between if it's a 3 acre minimum lot, if it's on a paved road or a gravel road, it wouldn't be affected negatively or different.
It wouldn't be different from a regulatory standpoint. The only thing I would say is the gravel roads are much lower roads, so the view is seen by far fewer people as you would on one of your main roads. But from a regulatory standpoint, we wouldn't treat it any differently.
okay.
Rick?
And just another question. I know when we had this discussion earlier, I think it was Reese and some other people had come forward. There was some concern based upon topography or the way things laid out as far as the ability to connect or putting infrastructure into there about fire hydrants and water supply. Have we addressed any of that within this?
To some degree. There will still be some locations within the city that just don't have fire hydrants supplied to them. I think when we looked at that analysis early on, the location of the fire hydrants was far greater than what we originally anticipated, so those areas that aren't covered are much smaller than what we anticipated. And so we had some discussion about whether or not the extending water to those areas, how critical that would be to this overall program. And because those areas were so few and far between through the city, it wasn't a high priority in this initial assessment of our ordinance changes. We still have some long-term ongoing discussions about how to either incentivize that or work with the county to extend water to those areas, but that wasn't something that we addressed in this initial assessment. I will say that the county has come back and said that if you want to, and they will accept infrastructure within these smaller subdivisions. So even though they don't necessarily go down public roads, if you wanted to install the infrastructure 8-inch lines so that they would accept them, they will accept them, which would eliminate some of the cost of the infrastructure at the beginning of the subdivision with the installation of the vault and the larger meters and backflow prevention associated with the private line. So the county has stepped up with some of that infrastructure to reduce some of the cost and the burden on these smaller lot developments.
Okay, because I think that the concern, as I recall, was the cost. At least in the specific example, one that came up was the cost to the developer when they wanted to do large lot development, but they were saying, here's what we as a city are requiring for fire protection, and then the developer was the one who's going to bear all that cost. That's, I guess what I'm saying is, do we think we've addressed that, where that's not an issue, or we're going to allow exemptions in this type of a scenario?
We've addressed it with the county to some extent, whereby they will accept these lines as public. And so that's a significant reduction in the cost of the infrastructure for the backflow prevention. We have talked about, and I'd have to go back and look specifically, there was a 600-foot limit in there, the hose lay length, which established the location of the hydrant. Internally, that we have discussed that could be extended to 800 feet based on our equipment and our capabilities with our department. And to be honest, I don't know if we got that in here or if we'll need to come back and put that in the fire protection chapter. But that is something that we're looking at too.
Okay. I would, I agree. I would like to see that if we can, because that was another hurdle.
Right.
If, somebody had 3 lots or whatever, they're putting on a big piece of property and they had to put, infrastructure all the way through it versus, I think it's reasonable, 800 feet. If you can get a hose from the street, 800 feet back will probably help most, cover most folks. On that's a long way, so.
I'll check on that. If I didn't pick that up in this particular section, we'll pick that up in the fire protection chapter.
Okay.
Sudi, do we have any public comment on this?
We do not, sir. Okay, I thought that was for canopy. So we have a card from Mr. Scott Reese then.
Okay, if it's okay with the council, I'll hear public comment. No? Except for Peyton.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Scott Reese, 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia, 30004. As I've said before, I think this is probably the most important aspect in the city that you guys will be taking up as far as slating the future of the development in the city. Going through the ordinance, just a few things that I'd like to go over, especially section 50-44 as far as the deletion of plats that have came through rezoning to go through the preliminary plat process. I'm sure as you're all aware, on a rezoning, a piece of property goes through a CIM, a public participation plan, a DRB, courtesy review, a planning commission review, and city council vote with the acceptance 99% of the time of a site plan that is specific to the development. So then to turn around and go through that process after you guys have already voted and dictated how it should be developed, to have to go back through the planning process where you tell them, this is the plat that's been approved, you've got to accept it, but we need to go through and waste time and effort. I think that really, really needs to be passed. All right. The reading through and the minor plat process showing that it was exempt from the tree survey and it was marked through. A minor plat, or what we used to call an exemption plat, has very, very limited infrastructure. So just adding the cost of the tree survey on the front end when it's going to be caught, because no lot can be built on without an individual site plan that would have to meet all the standards, at that point is when you would do. So just adding to the cost and then turn around and doing it again on the individual lot is just de-incentivizing as opposed to incentivizing. So I think you should include that back in instead of marking through, because we're not exempting from the tree ordinance. We're just delaying it to the property is being developed when the individual site plan is rendered. Okay. I just don't understand why we're capping at 5 lots. And I get that. I'm fine with 5 lots and 3 acres. But if you ride through Doris Road, you ride through Wood Road, you ride through Phillips Circle, Landrum Road, trying to think of the other ones. All of those roads, the development you see there, most of those we worked on and they were handled through a minor plat process. So, I don't know, 50% of the development on Wood Road was Sycamore Farms, an exemption plat that we did in the 80s. The Summit View Farms Cowart Road, Summit Road, all developed with the exemption plat or minor subdivision plat. It wasn't capped at a number. So I just, for the life of me, don't understand why we would de-incentivize or not incentivize. And I know there's a very few pieces of property, but why the properties that are there that we would say, you've got 100 acres, you want to put 10-acre lots on here. You know, we have no desire, if there's very limited infrastructure, the frontage is there to create it, why you would then force them to go through a major subdivision process, which is going to up infrastructure costs significantly, all the other stuff. So you won't get the 10 acres or the 10-acre lots. So I just don't understand why we don't have it as 5 3-acre lots and an unlimited number of 5 acres and more. I can't see the negative. Maybe staff will tell me and I'll just say, you know what, I was extremely stupid. I should have seen that point. I just can't find it. So I'm waiting to be told where I'm missing the boat on that. Back to the view shed. If they're 3 acres or 5-acre lots, there is in place a building setback of 60 feet. That's city standard. If they want to do a pasture in the front or whatever they're going to do, it's not going to destroy the view shed from any other properties that are in there. I don't see the case of just adding another layer of government that really doesn't accomplish anything. The 50-71, which was to go back where 10 years ago someone divided their property up and they've got now it was done through a minor plat process. They've got a 10 or 20-acre lot that was created that they want to now split that into 2 10-acre lots. And in the language says that now you would have to go before the community development director for approval. And I'm sorry, I don't see the need for another layer. It's going to have to go through the minor plat approval to be divided, but where's the negative in that 20-acre parcel becoming 2 10-acre parcels? Or if it's got to go through another layer of government, then why not let's just subdivide it and make it into a major subdivision, see if we can get 18 lots out of it. I don't see the need there. The one other thing that gave me cause was section 50-45 that said that no one could sell any property without going through a subdivision process. I understand that you can't be issued a building permit or do certain other things, but we run across a lot of times where neighbors have swapped property, whether they should or shouldn't have, but somehow they found an attorney to write up a deed and it was transferred. So the legality of that is, I mean, I didn't know that the city could stop someone from selling parcels of land, but I'm sure the attorney can, city attorney can. The thing that we run into is there is a certain rule, and I don't know if it's Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, that limits the amount of acreage allowed on a single-family residential loan at 5 acres. So we have estates where people come in, they have 20 acres, and they can only tie up 5 acres with a house to get the loan. And one time in 100 or whatever the number is, there's a foreclosure that goes on, and we have to clean it up. But that's the thing. Just, I would like to know the legality of the city saying that no one can sell any part of their property without going through a plat process. I really think you're on a very good design here. I just think we stopped a little bit short of where we should be. I really think we need to look at the infrastructure as far as the fire. There are certain gravel roads that do not have water lines, and I don't know what the cost would be for the city to help participate in getting water lines in those unserved areas. But if we're really serious about creating large lots, we need all the incentives that we can have in it. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, do we have any other public comments?
That's all, sir.
All right, anybody have anything else?
I do have a question for staff
Okay.
based on what Scott said. So what are some of the unintended consequences if it's not limited for the minor plat?
Well, from a process standpoint, I don't think it's a problem at all. I mean, it would basically go back to what we did for years before we implemented the Planning Commission. If you're talking about eliminating all of our design standards for a subdivision, that's a whole different issue for me. So,
where right now we're going to do 5 lots per 3 acres. Why is there an unintended consequence on having an unlimited amount?
So from that perspective, the 5 lots, there is a change in the design standards for those. And so that's why we wanted to limit that number.
Design standards, you mean internal infrastructure type?
Yes,
design standards?
right. And so you can those with what we have deemed in this to be the modified driveway, which is a level of driveway in between the typical driveway that has absolutely no design standards on it and a public road. And so the implications of extending that, modified driveway that we've not implemented before onto 15, 20, 30 lots, I'm not sure we're ready for that.
So what type of driveway is on Summit and Brittle and stuff like that? Like what he was talking about, Summit View Farms, what type of driveway is that?
So that's Summit and Brittle Road.
Right.
So relatively...
Those are single driveways to single-family homes, right?
Well, Summit Road itself serves that subdivision. So it was established, I don't know when that plat was, but it was established just as a gravel road, Summit and Brittle Road. And so we do have some issues with that. I mean, that's a constant grading issue that we deal with on all of our gravel roads every year. So to put that onto a subdivision, I think is probably a little bit difficult for me to recommend. But if all we're talking about is extending the process to these large lots, but maintaining the current design standards that we have associated with them, that's not a problem at all.
Well, let me ask a question on that, and I'll be honest, I'm all for any, again, because by right, you can develop land in Milton without any approval from us in 1 acre home sites within reason. So I'm all for anything that would incentivize somebody to do much less density. To me, and I don't know if you're calling, is Summit Road and Brittle, are you calling that a subdivision?
It is a subdivision.
Okay, but in my mind, it's not
Right.
a gravel road and everybody has individual driveways. So to the discussion, is it possible to open it up to, I know 5 acre minimum was mentioned, or if it's the 3 acre, but to allow that to continue up, and basically, to your point of having a driveway that only serves, one driveway serves 2 homes?
Correct.
They may have to have more driveways, and that would all depend on however the layout is of their development, whether it's, 20 acres or 100 acres, and they were doing 3 or 5 acre lots. Why couldn't we allow that to be on the minor plat?
And we could. I think my concern is around the infrastructure requirements associated with that, not procedural requirements. So if it's just a procedural issue and we just want to eliminate the Planning Commission, I'm fine with that. If we want a different set of design standards, or if we're talking about eliminating the design standards for the infrastructure components, that's where I have some concern. And if we want to go that route, I would want some time to establish those design standards.
And I'm thinking, like, when we all talk about Milton, everyone brings up those roads. Like, that's what we want. So I kind of want to go at least see what that route is going to look like. And, I know we're not in the 80s. We're in 2018. I know we got different stuff going on, but I would like to at least see that to make a good decision.
Everybody likes the aesthetic of those roads, but those roads are a maintenance issue for us.
Can that be on depending on the development, can that be a private, internal?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it can, and we talked about that. And so do you want to transfer that burden from the city to a group of homeowners who have a difficulty in some cases, maintaining a lot of their infrastructure that they're already responsible for. That's really a policy decision about whether or not we want to do something like that.
Worth looking at.
Anybody else on that, Rick?
I guess,
Laura?
I guess along the same line of what Peyton was hitting on, I think if you can make it simpler as far as the small plat, we've got limits in here. If we just change the process or expand it, so if they want to do more than 5 lots, like Mr. Reese had talked about, I wouldn't want to limit that. I wouldn't want, if we could follow the same process, the same standards, but open it up so that if someone does have a large plat that they want to develop into large lots, I think that's what we're trying to drive at anyway.
Matt, do you have anything? And Laura?
Yeah, the routes everybody have asked we go, obviously, we have the 1 acre lot issue. The question is if we can do 1 per 3 acres. It's an idea that's always come up. So why would we try to limit that?
I guess what I'm seeing in, Carter's, I think when we're thinking about a 5-lot development, we're thinking about a road frontage and there's 3 driveways or 2 driveways, 3, whatever it takes, 5. If we're talking about, and again, there's not many of these, but 100 acres that's being developed into a 3-acre to 5-acre lots, they're going to have some internal roads and whatnot, and that's your concern, correct?
That's correct.
And again, but is there a happy medium with, let's say, instead of a 3-lot subdivision, let's say there happens to be 30 acres, 40 acres, in a certain, to where it really would not require internal streets, but it, had driveways coming off a main road. So it's no different than if it were split up in parcels and then they developed it. But, if somebody was able to develop just take the next step from a 5-lot subdivision to a 10-lot subdivision, but they were treating it the same way as far as access, a shared driveway or individual driveways or whatever. Is there any reason why we couldn't take that limit off of that instead of being at 5? My point is, let's take what we're talking about, a 5-lot development. If they have the large lots, can it go in increment on up as long as it's not having internal infrastructure?
You could, and then you're really talking about procedural changes as opposed to infrastructure design changes. So absolutely, that's not a problem at all.
And that it may be somebody goes to a 7, there's enough land, they want to do a 7-lot one versus a 5 or a 10, but, it's probably not going to, far and few between, they're going to be huge.
But I think that the same, maybe what you're hitting at, Joe, is if you still have the gravel road or the driveway standards, but if they had 15 of those or 10 of those with larger lots, that still gets us really to where we want. I guess I'd like to see you take a look at, can you change it so we actually make it more inclusive, so would it allow the same type of standards, but go underneath the minor plat rules for a large lot subdivision, even though it's not, quote unquote, a minor plat, but follow the minor plat rules. Is there a way to incorporate some of that language to allow to not have the restriction of 5 lots?
Yeah, to that point, my point is, hey, if we're allowing some flexibility, if you'll do something what the community deems as good, why put a limit on it? You can only do 5 of them. Well, if you've got, if you want to do 10, that's just another, that's more land.
It sounds like we're never going to see another Summit and Brittle and stuff, but this is what we want.
Yeah.
And if it's going to cost a little bit to maintain an extra gravel road, because we're probably only talking about a handful of parcels out of the whole deal. And this is not going to be some mass development. Oh, I'm going to go build my 3-acre and 4-acre parcels and I'm going to have gravel roads. This is probably only going to happen to a couple more parcels. And that's what I think we want to see. And so I would like to see that language in here. That's just me.
And procedurally, as long as we're not talking about internal infrastructure and all that.
So the first step would just be to increase the threshold by which you had to go through the
meeting the same
major or
requirements.
minor plat process.
I mean,
Leave the design standards the same.
The example I can think, let's say somebody has, I'm just making up numbers, a mile of frontage or a half a mile of frontage, and somebody decides, well, hey, I'm going to do, they allow me up to 5 acres or 5 lots of 3 acres. I'm going to do 5 3-acre lots. Then I got all the rest of this frontage, and I'm going to go through all the rigmarole and red tape of doing a whole application. We'll just pack the houses in there to offset that versus, hey, this will just let us keep on down there with the low density.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Or you may have someone who wants to do a standard road that would be a public road going through that, but have the parcels going off so it's more estate lots versus individual driveways going to individual estates.
And I think in that rare instance, they could meet the requirement. If they want to do internal roads, they would just have to, meet the requirements. But they also have the option of just doing driveways too.
Yeah.
And we could relook at that if we find a situation that is impacting the outcome that our citizens want.
I would suggest that I bring this language back as opposed to trying to work it tonight, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'm wondering if,
That's what I'm thinking.
what would be the recommendation? Because again, the longer we wait to get any of this in, the chance that we lose valuable land.
It would be in addition to what we're discussing tonight, so we could approve
Could we
tonight.
pass what we've got tonight?
We could.
Some minor tweaks if we want to, but then bring this back to us to offset that.
We could.
Next meeting or two.
Okay
Yes.
with that?
Okay, Laura, do you have any comments?
Yeah, no, just looking at the design standards, if the cap, the 5 lot cap was lifted, I understand why that's concerning to Carter as far as maintenance and things like that. So I do agree. I would like to see more details on that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so anything else on that?
The only thing I wanted to clarify was the discussion on the rule of viewshed, and if we needed to make any changes to that language. So that language exists in the zoning ordinance, so it would have to go through the zoning process. So currently, rather than referring to minor plats, it only refers to subdivisions with more than 3 lots. So all of these that we're talking about would still be subject to the rule of viewshed. Is there any interest in changing that language?
I have an interest in it.
Yeah.
I think the council.
Okay.
Now, what would that process be then? Is that something we can do with this tonight, or does that need to be?
That would go through the entire zoning process as a zoning amendment.
Okay. So something you could bring back with the other stuff?
It would probably follow behind it.
But
So I can do
same.
the other stuff quickly in a couple of revisions, but this would require the whole CZIM Planning Commission process to modify that. And it would be modified in probably 5 or 6 different sections in the code.
So at this point, then it'll come back before us. At this point, though, let's say somebody applied for something tomorrow. They would, up to 3 lots, they wouldn't have to
Correct.
comply with the rural view shed, but then after 3 lots, but you can bring it back to us and council can decide then.
Well, I guess the question is, so if they had 5 3-acre lots, the rural view shed still applies because it's more than 3 lots?
That's correct.
Yep.
When we were originally talking about this, I actually thought that the language said did not apply to a minor plat. And by incorporating these 5 lots, larger lots, into the minor plat process, it would have excluded it from that. But it doesn't refer to a minor plat. It just refers to 3 lots.
Okay, it was very specific then. So if we approve this today, it allows large lots, but still there's a limitation. If they went over 3, they're still going to have to comply with the rural view shed.
That is correct.
We can approve this tonight to at least help some
there.
get going.
Yeah.
And then there's the desire with the council to as reasonably quick as possible, bring it back to us to open up to the rural view shed, as well as extending the a number of large lots.
Correct.
To be a minor plat.
And the public safety and some other.
You can look at the, okay.
Okay.
All right, any questions, or I'll,
Mr. Mayor, I have just one comment real quick. Carter, so I was trying to look through and catch up with this. Is there anything in here that talks about a prohibition on conveyances of land?
So that's an old section of the code. We didn't have any discussion on that previously.
Could you just direct me to it?
It's
just so I can-
section 50-45. Which basically says you have to get a plat approved to make sure it conforms with our design standards, zoning standards, before you can sell the lots.
Right. So, okay. So the short answer is individuals are conveying property throughout Georgia all the time, certainly without necessarily local government signing off on it. But there is a State of Georgia Plat Act which says that once a subdivision, whether it's a city or a county, has adopted platting and zoning and subdivision regulations, that no plat or subdivision plat can be recorded in the clerk's office to signify the subdivision of property until it's been signed off on by the local government. So this language is not unusual, but it is likely a manifestation of the notion that if you sell property that is not compliant with our subdivision and platting regulations, you're not going to be able to make it a lot of record, and therefore it is effectively worthless. That's probably aspirationally what this is getting to. But no, if someone wants to go and sell property that's legally non-conforming, are we going to issue them a citation? No. If they come in to record a plat based upon that subdivision, will we turn them away if their plat is non-conforming or that parcel's non-conforming? Yeah, we will. So that's what that's getting to.
Okay. So would the recommendation be to approve as is tonight? I don't know, we had a couple of changes. I don't think we can make the changes, but just clear that the council is interested in making those changes and putting it forward. Good discussion. All right, I'll open it for a motion.
So I guess Mayor will make a motion to approve agenda item number 18-209.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval. Councilmember Kuntz, second by Councilmember Morrig. All in favor, please say aye.
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 That's unanimous. Sudi?
Thank you.
Thank you, Carter. Sudi, if you'll please call the next item.
Next item is consideration of the amended Milton Tree Canopy Conservation Ordinance, agenda item number 18-10. First presentation was at the July 23rd City Council meeting. Mr. Carter Lucas.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. When we adopted the tree ordinance the last time, we included a date at which you could use
Mayor,
both.
if I may, yeah, just very quickly, we've lost our quorum. Can we?
Oh,
can we
sorry.
delay?
All right, we'll hold off a second. Have to remind we're tight to.
That only really becomes a problem when we've just four.
Hayden, can you hear us?
No, we soundproofed everything.
Which one? Different changes.
Matt, you mind getting them?
Not going to work.
Oh, no, give me a little bit of time to.
Sudi, let the record show that Councilmember Jameson is in the bathroom. It's kind of like anybody who's called an office or somebody's office and they say, oh, he stepped across the hall. And you want to say, you mean he went to the bathroom? All right, now we're back.
It's all the water.
For the record, Councilmember Jameson has returned from the restroom.
We have a quorum again.
All right, we have a quorum. So Carter, if you can continue.
Now I forgot where I was.
Yeah, just start over.
When we did the original tree ordinance, we had a date of August 5th in ordinance by which you could use either the new canopy ordinance or the old tree density ordinance. We have been working on revisions to the canopy ordinance, and those revisions with the stakeholder committee are still going on. So all of this change is to extend that date from August 5th to December 3rd to allow us to complete those changes to the canopy ordinance.
Okay. Sudi, do we have any public comment?
We do have one from Mr. Scott Reese.
Okay. Allow that.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Scott Reese, 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia. The tree ordinance as passed, the new one, there are a few problems with it. I'm on the stakeholder group we're working through. There's just not enough time. But in the time we're at now, in this interim, we had a few people come forward and said that there were problems with selling their property and inherited because of the confusion. So I would just ask that you extend this to alleviate the confusion for your citizens and allow them to operate as standard until the tree ordinance can be passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any more public comment?
That's all, sir.
Okay. All right, I'll open up for discussion, questions, or an motion. I think, the thing is now we're extended to what, December 3rd, or the request is, and that allows, it allows anybody to go back to the old ordinance if necessary, so we haven't changed the rules on anybody.
Correct.
Okay, I feel good with that. All right, somebody want to make a motion? Or
Yeah, I'll do. I have a question real quick, Steve. I haven't been keeping up with how the committee's been doing and the stakeholder group. Obviously, we've been through this process for a little while. But dealing with trees, I know we're talking about credits for trees and things like that, but still, I just want to emphasize, and I've heard it again from the community, that barns are also creditworthy in my mind, historical landmarks, things like that we might want to think about in the community also. So it's just something that I wanted to make sure I relayed that I'm hearing from people in the community.
Absolutely, I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve agenda item number 18-210.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion for approval from Councilmember Kuntz, second from Councilmember Jameson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 That's unanimous, City. Okay, let's move on to our final unfinished business item. City, if you'll please call it.
This item is consideration of an ordinance to revise the alcohol code to allow Sunday sales by the drink between 11 a.m. and 12:30 p.m., conditional upon voter approval, to repeal ordinances in conflict and set an effective date. Agenda item number 18198. First presentation was at the July 9th City Council meeting. Mr. Ken Gerard.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you have in your agenda book this evening a ordinance that is basically just the manifestation of the new state law, colloquially called the Brunch Bill, that basically says that if a jurisdiction already allows alcohol sales for consumption by the drink, and if you've already approved those for Sunday, which the city of Milton has, then you can take the next step, which is you can take to the voters a referendum that will push back the time at which on Sunday that alcohol consumption by the drink can occur from the current requirement of 12:30 p.m. and push it back to 11 a.m. And that is one of the referendums that the city of Milton has chosen to have this year, as have a host of other local jurisdictions. So this ordinance is the ordinance that anticipates and would set in place that requirement, and of course it is a conditional ordinance. In other words, this ordinance says that entities that sell alcohol by the drink in Milton can in fact sell at 11 a.m. on Sundays, conditioned upon a successful referendum in November.
Okay. And again, just to clarify, this is the decision we are making. We're not approving it or not. We're approving it to put on the ballot and letting our citizens approve it.
Well, it's two steps. You are approving the ordinance, but it is a conditional approval subject to the voters saying, yes, we want it.
So my point is the voters have the ultimate decision.
That is
We
correct.
can approve it here if we want to, but they can say no.
The voters
Now, if we don't
deny
approve
is-
it,
Yes.
then it never goes to the citizens.
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions, or I'll open up for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve agenda item number 18-198.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Councilmember Morrig, second from Councilmember Jameson. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's unanimous, City. So let's move on to new business. City, if you'll please call that item.
This item is consideration of a land acquisition agreement between the City of Milton, Georgia, and Wolf Investments, LP, Bernard W. Wolf, John M. Wolf, MD, Susan W. Lindley, Marion W. Nolan, and Nancy L. Wolf, related to the purchase of 109.59 acres, more or less, otherwise known as the following Fulton County tax parcels, 4 parcels total. PIN 22-337-010-140-192 on 0 Lackey Road, 46.29 acre parcel. PIN 22343-010-150-017 on 1000 Lackey Road, 40 acre parcel. The third parcel is PIN 22340-010-160-024 on 1000 Lackey Road, 20 acre parcel. And the last parcel is PIN 22349-010-170-202 on 0 Sweet Apple Road, 6.30 acre parcel with a purchase price of $35,000 per acre. Agenda item number 18232. Mr. Carter Lucas.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. So before you tonight is a contract for the consideration of a tract we call the Wolf property. This property is located in the very southwest corner of the city between Sweet Apple Road and Lackey Road. As Sudi mentioned, it's made up of 4 separate parcels that total 112.59 acres. The difference is a 3-acre tract that will be retained by the seller to get us to 109.59 acres. When we looked at this tract, when it was scored out, a number of the highest scoring criteria were related to the water resources on the tract, natural areas, and wildlife habitat. It has roughly 6,000 feet along a tributary to Little River. It's got a 2.5 acre pond on the site. Natural areas include floodplain along the property, steep slopes along the property. According to Fish and Wildlife, it's also in an area of threatened and endangered species. We have some sumacs in that particular drainage basin, some Cherokee darters in the Little River Basin. It's on a long migratory bird path for 5 different birds in this particular area. And it is the 109.59 acres that I mentioned. That's minus the 3 acres to be retained by the seller. Total purchase price of $3.835 million, which is $35,000 per acre. This would be our second purchase under the Green Space Bond Program, which including this parcel would get us to a total of 249.38 acres in that overall program. So approval of this contract tonight would begin our due diligence period and allow us to get the surveys, environmental documents, Phase 1 documents completed on the process as we move forward through the purchasing process.
Okay, and again, this is, again, a green space bond purchase to preserve land, passive land. It went through our committee, which did a great job assessing everything. It seems to be a very good value for our citizens. Also, as everybody here knows, if we put it under contract, we still, that doesn't mean we're locked in, that we have to, we've got a due diligence period. We've got some things that have to be worked through and confirmed, but this is the first stage. So any questions from anybody on this?
That's a 60-day due diligence, right?
Is it 60 days?
I think this is 90 or 120 days.
90 or 100, okay.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll open up for a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve agenda item number 18-232.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Jameson, second from Councilmember Kuntz, and a distant third from Councilmember Murray. Again, one comment, and this is just another, we were talking earlier about our tax, our millage rate and whatnot. while this is a great purchase and a great asset for our community and a great deal, again, this is something that, will take money to maintain and whatnot. But overall, I think this is a great thing. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, that's unanimous, Sudie. Okay. Thank you, Carter. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on to reports. Anything the council wants to report on tonight? And I'll move on to staff. Public Works.
Oh, I will say you did a good job at the North Fulton Republican Party mayor's meeting. So, yeah, had to say that.
Good evening. An update on our T-SPLOS program. We're now a quarter of the way into collections, and with our July revenue tracking at 88% now of our original projections at this point in the timeline. So that's gone up over the past couple months. It started at 85, and like I said, now we're at 88%. Some project updates will be coming at an upcoming meeting to give you some updates on Hopewell Hamby, Hopewell Thompson, present those concept plans, as well as an update on where we are with the Hopewell Bethany concept development. The construction started on Friday at Freemanville Providence with some initial clearing for utility relocations to begin on that project, and Morris Webb is underway with construction as well. Upcoming construction, I mentioned at the last update, we've started to see some markings going on at the 372 at Green Road turn lane. So that's where DOT is going to come in and do left turn lanes on 372 at those two intersections, Green and Batesville. So that should be starting in the next month or so. So any other questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you. I'm going to throw out a comment. Thanks also to our communications, because I know the tree at Freemanville and Providence, the trees, things like that normally we'll probably get more calls from people out of the blue, but I think that type of stuff is communicated, so that's good. And if you can keep that going with all this progress, I think folks really appreciate that. Parks and Rec, Mr. Craig.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to let you know that we've had a very successful summer here. At one point, we had 6 different camps running simultaneously. Baseball camp, lacrosse camp, many musicians, basketball camp, football, and of course, Camp Joy Souls. You may recall that we made the decision after last year, when we nearly sold out the entire camp, to expand and move it to Milton High School. This allowed us to take on 30 kids a week as compared to 25 at Hopewell Middle School. We sold out all 7 weeks, and we had waiting lists. So if we had a community center with more space, we could expand that. The swim team had a very successful season. From the previous year, when they had 62 members, this year they had 87 members. And they successfully put on 2 swim meets at the Milton Country Club. We had great cooperation from the police and communications, as we were able to talk to all the neighbors ahead of time, let them know it was coming. And there was no significant issues other than a lot of people having a lot of fun. The pool itself, we have, as of this time, sold a total of 467 passes, broken out into groups of 4-pack, 5-pack, and 6-pack. And I've run some stats, and of the 467 passes sold, 337 passes have been used. People have made at least one appearance at the pool. 130 have not yet come to the pool. We sold 215 daily passes. People just coming by making infrequent visits. Today was the first day that we have changed the hours to our school season hours. We now have the pool open from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. on weekdays. And on the weekends, it will still be 11 to 8 and 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And on Monday of Labor Day, it will be open from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then that will be the closing of the pool. Also, we had a very successful meeting. We did a workshop-style meeting with the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and we also invited all of our program partners. Every single program partner showed up, and we had a very active, engaged group as we worked on issues involving the total capacity for each of the fields and courts and pool that we use, commission structure, and discussions on the MOU with Alpharetta, and you'll hear more about that next week at the workshop. And the final thing I'll say is for this quarter, the goal is to try and finish, now that we have Providence Park Master Plan done, want to bring the city overall master plan, bring that in for a landing as well. Any questions, folks?
Questions on park? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Sure. All right, anybody else, staff, council? If not, that'll conclude our meeting. I'll open up for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous.